Hello guys, how are you? My name is Nelson Viegas. I'm a personal trainer. Like I always say, I'm a personal improver because I try to improve the life of people. And here we're gonna start a few series of videos about fat loss, about muscle gain. I will explain a little bit physiology for you guys to have a little bit more detail for trainers, for clients, short videos that you guys can learn how really the fat loss happens, the muscle gaining, what is the factors that can really interfere in that process. Okay, so today I brought a subject here that I listen lots of times. It's that people don't understand how they really lose fat. Okay, so there is several processes in our body that makes our body lose fat. So one of the main process is called lipolysis. So we have the lipolysis and we have another one called beta oxidation. Okay, for your body to start doing lipolysis, it needs to be in calorie deficit. So calorie deficit means that the energy that comes inside your body is less than the energy that is coming outside the body. So that's why there is this theory of calories in and calories out. But it's not just that. There is lots of things that interfere in that calories in and calories out. Okay, but today our main focus will be the lipolysis. So I will not speak too much about calorie deficit. I will go to this subject in another video, and also the beta oxidation. Okay, so today mainly this video is about lipolysis. So what is lipolysis? So lipolysis comes from lipo, from lipids, from fat. Zis comes from destruction. So lipolysis is like the burning or the destruction of the fat. What fat do you have in our body? We store in our body the fat in a form called triglycerides or triglycerol. So you can call the both names. So these triglycerides, they are 3 fatty acids with 1 glycerol attached. Okay, so this is how the body stores. It can store fat through fat. It can store fat through carbohydrates in excess. Also can store fat by amino acid, which is a process that's a little bit more difficult to happen, but also happen like that in calorie surplus. Okay, but the main source that the body uses to store fat is fat, and then also carbohydrates, because of lots of aspects that you're gonna speak now about this. Okay, so let's start. So I have here in the screen, I hope you guys are seeing well. So this round thing here that we have, it's our adipocyte. So adipocyte is where the body stores the fat. Okay, so the fat, the triglycerides, they are stored here. That's why it's called triglyceride pool. So here it's all, this is this is full of fat. Okay, so this is where we store our fat. So the lipolysis happens lots of things in the membrane of this adipocyte that interferes with the fat burning. So when you go for a calorie deficit, when you go for a physical activity, when you go for fasting, or any type of process that creates any type of stress in your body starts this process as a survival mechanism. Okay, so it's called lipolysis. So how happens the lipolysis? The lipolysis is activated by several hormones. Here is just some of them. I didn't put here all of them, but just some of them, just for you guys to understand. Okay, so we have the insulin, we have the leptin, we have the noradrenaline, we have the glucocorticoids, and the lipoproteins. So this is the things that affects our cell. Other things also affect, like GH, like T3, so thyroid hormones. There's lots of things that can interfere. Glucagon also, so other things that can interfere. So when you go to a calorie deficit diet, what happens is there is information to this cell that we don't have enough energy to perform. So we need to release some of these triglycerides and transform them into energy. So this is the first signal. So the first signal, it happens when your insulin drops. Okay, so your insulin drops. The role of insulin in adipocyte is to connect to this receptor called insulin receptor. Okay, in a cell we have this insulin receptor, and this insulin receptor, when there is insulin, the body can put glucose inside the cell by this transporter called GLUT4. Okay, I speak a lot about this in my stories, in my podcasts. So this GLUT4 is present in adipocyte and is also present in the muscle cells, okay? So there is different types of glutes. It depends on the place that we are speaking about. The liver has another glute, the brain has another glute, the intestines has another glute. So it is different glutes, glucose transport, okay? So in the adipocyte, we use GLUT 4. So when we don't eat our insulin drops, our glucagon, insulin is produced in the beta cells of the pancreas, glucagon is produced on the alpha cells of the pancreas. So when insulin drops, there is no information to put glucose inside the cell. So this information to remove. So who gives this information? Glucagon. So glucagon comes, connects to the glucagon receptor and start a cascade of things that makes the triglycerides being breaking down. So they stimulate here. Here it's shown by noradrenaline, but also glucagon does in this, not in this receptor. This is the beta receptor. So you see BR receptor, it means beta adrenergic receptor. Adrenergic comes from adrenaline. So here you have the noradrenaline, you can also call epinephrine and adrenaline. But also this other receptor here that does exactly what happens with this noradrenaline. Remember what I told you, stress. So cortisol and glucagon. So cortisol also comes here and does the same thing, activate the cyclic AMP, activates the PKA, the protein kinase A, and stimulates this enzyme called hormone sensitive lipids. So this is the first enzyme that breaks down the triglycerides into free fatty acids and glycerol. So what happens is this HSL breaks, so you have the three fatty acids I explained to you, you have the glycerol, so it breaks down. These three fatty acids goes to the muscle to be used in that process. I will explain in another video called beta oxidation, and the glycerol goes to the liver to be converted into glucose. Okay, so this is how it starts. And then we have several hormones here that does, I will not go in details in all of them, but there is a very important hormone that we produce in this adipocyte called leptin. Okay, this leptin is what it's now the main study of most of the studies that they are making on fat loss and fat gain. So this leptin is a hormone that you produce in your fat tissues. So it's in the periphery. You have hormones that you produce in organs, like for example insulin is produced in the pancreas, but you have also hormones that is produced in the periphery, like leptin, like adenopectin, like lots of hormones that is produced, CCK, cholecystokinin, like GLP-1, like neuropeptide, like peptide YY. So whatever, there is lots of hormones that they are produced in the periphery that interfere with this adipocyte. So make a long story short, you are now in a calorie deficit process. So we are going to a calorie deficit, start doing physical activity or fasting. These triglycerides start being breaking down. So this is the process of lipolysis. Okay, I want to explain this when I explain better about the muscle gain, how this GLUT4 is important, and how this glucose can be also converted into fat. So this that I'm explaining you, this lipolysis, is in a fasted state. Okay, but if I'm in a fat state, it's completely different. Remember, if I'm in a fat state, I'm eating, I'm putting energy inside the cell. So I'm putting the glucose inside the cell, also the fat. So the transporter of glucose is called GLUT4. The transporter of fat is called CD36, cluster differentiation 36. So it's another receptor that puts fat inside the cell. So when you eat fat, or even this fat here, you guys need to understand that if I do any type of calorie deficit diet, or if I increase my lipolysis, activating the beta androgen receptor with some type of stimulants, like people, they use lots of stimulants because they want to activate this beta receptor. In a fat cell is the beta 3 receptor, but you also have beta 2 receptors in lots of organs, like for example the lungs, and you have beta 1 receptors in the heart. That's why some medicines like clenbuterol, salbutamol, albuterol, ephedrine, they activate receptors, but they are not specific in some receptors. For example, clenbuterol is not specific on beta 3 receptor. It also works on the beta 2 receptor. That's why it's a medicine for asthma, because we have asthma in our lungs, so it relaxes the muscles of all your respiratory tract. Okay, so but it's used also because it also activates the beta 3 receptor, so also helps in this process. But when you use this, when you use this process, when you use this type of products, they only activate the lipolysis. Okay, if this fat is not being used, if they don't go to the cell and be used as beta oxidation, which is the really fat burn, that's the real fat burn, you all these free fatty acids that you see here, they go around the body and they will come again to CD36 and go again to the cell. Okay, so make fasting, like I see people sometimes say, oh no, but what do you think about fasting? I say it depends. If you do physical activity when you are fasted, if you are in calorie deficit, these free fatty acids, after being breaking down, they can be used as energy. But if you're not doing anything that produces energy, so you're not doing any physical activity, and you're not in calorie deficit, that makes that your body has a basal metabolic rate superior to the calories that is really ingesting, what's going to happen is these fatty acids, they are being breaking down, but then they go again all the way around. So they are transported by albumin. So when they get out of the cell, albumin, which is a protein, because free fatty acids and blood, so blood is water, and free fatty acids is fat, so fat and water don't mix. So in the blood, they need a transporter. So the transporter that does the transportation of these free fatty acids is albumin. Okay, it's a protein called albumin. And also the triglycerides, when they come in the blood, so this is the entrance of the blood. So here you see triglyceride is put inside the cell by this lipoprotein, this LPL, lipoprotein lipase. So this lipoprotein lipase breaks down the triglyceride outside of the cell and put the free fatty acid inside the cell, and then it's converted into fatty acetyl-CoA, and then go to lipogenesis and lipogenesis. So this is how the body puts fat inside the adipocyte and creates triglycerides. So remember, lipolysis is going out, here it's coming in. So if you do this process, so albumin does this is done by the lipoprotein. So when you eat fat, the fat is transported by chylomicrons and VLDL. Okay, so very low density lipoproteins and chylomicrons. So these chylomicrons come here and then, okay, fat, you are here, you are ready to go inside the cell. So this lipoprotein lipase breaks down, again, puts the free fatty acid inside the cell, and they are re-esterified here again. So they reconnect again the glycerol and the free fatty acid, and they create the triglycerides. So this is the process of lipolysis. It's a very simple explanation just for you guys to understand. So sometimes just going for fasting activates this process, because when you fast, you increase your noradrenaline, you increase your adrenaline, and you increase your cortisol and your glucagon. So these cells start, okay, we have less energy that we need to survive, so let's go to the cell, do this process, breaking down, blah, 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 free fatty acid, let's go. But then if you come home and you eat again, the body will convert that excess of calories again into fat. So you're not losing anything. So fasting can be a tool, but it's not a miracle, okay? So please guys, make sure that I will make like detailed videos about fasting. Today I just want to focus on the lipolysis in a very short video, just for you guys to understand what is the lipolysis and what is all these mechanisms. And I didn't even went in detail to all these things, but at least I think you guys understand. So fasting, it can work to fat loss, but you have to be in calorie deficit and you have to do physical activity, okay? Because other thing that happens sometimes is when you do this process, everything is perfect. You say, okay, now it's perfect. I'm gonna do, I want to start to stimulate my lipolysis, so I will do calorie deficit, I will do physical activity, and I will increase my lipolysis. I say, perfect. But the problem is, you need to pay attention about how much calories are you burning in your training and how much calories now you are saving in your day. Because I see this every time. Every person starts to train, what happens is, imagine that a client goes to the gym 3 times per week. Just make a long story short, I will make a video about this to be more in detail, but just to give you a glance. A week has 168 hours, okay? Now imagine you're training someone 3 times per week, 3 hours, okay? So 1 hour every week. In the end of the week, you are comparing 168 hours to 3 hours. So you are 3 hours. So how many is 3 hours in terms of percentage to 168? It's around 2%. So 2% of your time you are burning calories. Okay, you are burning calories. Then what type of stimulus are you really stimulating your body? Because this happens so the process of lipolysis happens. This is the first process. Then you have the second process, like I told you, which is called beta oxidation. But the beta oxidation happens more if you use other type of substrate. So if the intensity of the exercise is too high, the body don't like to use too much fat. Okay, we always use all the substance that we have. We start using ATP-CP, you start using glycogen, and then you start using fat. So this is what we always do. So if the intensity is low, I'm using fat. I'm here speaking with you guys now. I'm losing fat because I'm using fat because it's not an intense physical exercise that I'm doing here. I'm just standing, speaking, so I'm using fat. As soon as I start running, I start losing less fat and I use more glycogen because the effort is more intense. So, and then what happens is in the end of the day, I feel more tired. So when I come home, instead of doing my basic activity that we call NEAT, which means non-exercise activity thermogenesis, so I start sitting more. So I start relaxing more. I start chilling more. So I burn, for example, 300 calories in 1 hour of training, which is a very good training because don't look at the watches, don't believe in those watches because they are overestimated, okay? So, but imagine I can really do a very hard training for 1 hour and I burn 300 calories. So I burn 300 calories in my training, remember, in 2% of the hours of all the week, so the volume of hours of the week is 168 hours. So in 3 hours, so in 2%, I'm losing 300 calories. But now I sit more. So if I sit more, my non-exercise activity thermogenesis, so I start reducing my activity, my thermogenesis. So I start reducing. So in the end of the day, most diets don't work because people start training with a trainer and then what they do, they rest more. So you burn 300 calories here, but you save 600 there. You keep the same food. So in the end of the day, you don't see any results. You say, man, I'm telling you with you and I don't see results. You don't see results because you stimulate this process, you stimulate the lipolysis, you do some beta oxidation in 2% of the time, but then you go home and you sit all day. You don't have any type of activity. That's why now we have to, most of my clients, I do this, I count the steps that they do. So I make them wear a watch and they have to show me every day how much steps. I ask them for 10,000, 12,000, 13,000 steps per day. I need to see, and they only use the watch outside the gym. Okay, I want to see what is the activity of that person outside of the gym. Okay, because I don't want to start training this person. I increase all these processes here. I go even for a calorie deficit, and I go even for whatever training and whatever. But it's only 2%. The rest of the 98% what the person is doing. So, make a long story short, I don't want to go into other details because this conversation can go to other details. I want just to focus here on the lipolysis, and I want you guys to understand. So what provocates lipolysis? Activating receptors on adipocyte. So glucagon is a hormone that does this. Cortisol does this. Remember at the beginning of the video, it's always something that causes stress. So training is a stress activation. So you stress, you increase your adrenaline, you increase your cortisol, your glucagon, you reduce insulin, and you also reduce all these hormones. Leptin, I will leave this leptin for another video just to, because this leptin is super important because this is the hormone that gives information to your brain to stop eating. Okay, but then also our brain, it becomes very easily resistant to leptin. So these two hormones, it's very easy to create resistance. Insulin resistance, which is lots of, I don't want to speak about percentage, but the percentage, big percentage of the population now they suffer from insulin resistance because they eat too much simple sugars. So the GLUT4 is overwhelmed. The body cannot produce enough energy to this. But this doesn't happen here. It happens in a muscle cell. So that's the fat burning. So, but what I'm trying to say is, people are insulin resistant. When people are insulin resistant, what happens is I'm going to say something that probably you will not understand, but I will try to explain you in a way that you understand. Remember, insulin blocks HSL and stimulates LPL. So a person that has insulin resistance, which is most of the people, they are insulin resistant. So you have insulin resistant, you have metabolic syndrome, insulin resistant, diabetes type 2, diabetes type 1. So this is how the body starts to become less and less effective in processing carbohydrates. Okay? So when you are insulin resistant, you are at the same time doing lots of lipolysis. And you could say, wow, that's amazing. No, because when I block insulin, so insulin makes the body, makes this cell do lipolysis all the time. But the problem is now, all these free fatty acids, they go to the blood and they increase a lot the free fatty acids inside the blood. which is not good. So when you measure the triglycerides in the blood of someone, it's super high. So it means that the person is doing lots of lipolysis, but it's not doing that oxidation. So all this fat comes and comes back again here. Okay, so leptin does a job, but if the cell is resistant if the cell is resistant to insulin, so this process doesn't happen. So insulin cannot stimulate, cannot block HSL. So if you cannot block, HSL is working all the time. So you're doing lipolysis all the time. You understand? So make a long story short, like, I hope you guys understand. So all the processes of the lipolysis of the body. So this is how it happens. I hope this video is a little bit simple. I try not to go in too much details, but I hope you guys enjoy and keep watching my videos to understand. Next time I will do a video about beta oxidation and how the body really burns fat, because after this process, remember, the muscles, they don't have too much triglycerides inside. The quantity of triglycerides inside the muscle is minimum. So the energy the fat loss that you really lose comes from the adipocytes. It comes from this cell. So now we need to bring this to the muscle cell to be used as energy to produce ATP, and it's another process. That's why when the effort is too intense, you are speaking about two places. So you have to go first. You need to create a stimulus. You have to go to the adipose tissue. We have to go to the adipocytes and say, okay, do this. HSL breaks out triglycerides. Now the triglycerides comes out. Then they go to the muscle. Then the muscle, they need to go inside the cell by CPT1, and then put inside the mitochondria by CPT2, and then do the beta oxidation. But this is another process which is very complicated. That's why more volume exercise, they activate more fat loss. Short, intense exercise, they activate more glycogen and ATP-CP. But even like that, when people can say, okay, so walking for 1 hour is better than training bodybuilding for 1 hour. Yes and no, because bodybuilding creates some adaptations and cardio creates other adaptations. So losing fat in a moment of the training, it doesn't mean that you're gonna have fat loss, because I can burn more calories inside the training. But like I said before, you're gonna also rest more. You're gonna probably eat more. Remember that for every kilo that you lose, you reduce your metabolism around 30 calories, but you gain appetite. So you increase your appetite around 100 calories. So you become more hungry. So you eat more. You start making more mistakes. So the fat loss is a process. It's a very complicated process, because people sometimes they don't have the notion of what they are doing. They don't have the notion that they are resting more, because now they have a trainer, they did a very hard leg workout, so they need to rest more. Because I train legs today. Wow, I spent all morning training legs. I did squats and leg presses and this and this and this. So in the training, like I said, the person burns 300 calories, but those 300 calories, they have zero effect on fat loss. You understand? I know this can disappoint you guys. You are expecting me to come in and say that, okay, there is a training, very special training that I do in 1 hour, you want to burn 3,000 calories, but that's not possible, you know. So if you listen to any trainer saying this type of bullshit, is a liar. So he's not explaining, because it's not the calories that you burn inside the workout that's going to make any difference on a fat loss. Remember, you have 168 hours in a week, and if you train 3 times per week, you're training 3 hours, which is 2% of the time. So, okay. Doesn't make any difference. What makes a difference is the calorie deficit, is the adaptations, the mitochondrial biogenesis, is the stimulation of other pathways that makes your body really starts burning more fat while it's resting. Okay, so I'm going to make a video also about that, how much calories you really burn, what is the importance of the training, and how many calories you really spend inside the training, and how is that important or is not that important. There is other factors that they are more important. Okay, because remember that the activity, what we call the EAT, so the exercise activity thermogenesis, is around 5 to 10% of your total energy that you eat all day. So if you eat 3,000 calories in your normal day, so if you eat 3,000 calories, you burn 300, it's 10%. So where the rest is burning. Okay, so you have this total energy expenditure. So you eat 3,000 calories, you burn 3,000 calories. Okay, so now if I go and I train 7 times per week, I burn 300 calories. What that makes difference? Zero. what makes a big difference is your basal metabolic rate is 70%. So your basal metabolic, so if I do certain type of trainings that increases my mitochondrial biogenesis, that makes me burn more fat while I'm resting, that's the goal of fat loss, that's the goal of training, that's the goal of a trainer, not inside the workout. Okay, I know that trainers don't like to listen to this, but this is the reality. It's not inside the workout that you're going to lose the fat. You know, in the training you create stimulus, and then the diet, it's where you can do the big calorie deficit, because it's all about, if I burn 300 calories in my training, but I also reduce my calories like 500 or 600 calories, now I have a deficit of 900 calories. So that start making some sense, you know. But also I increase my basal metabolic rate. So I increase, if I train bodybuilding, I increase more muscle mass. If I increase more muscle mass, I increase more mitochondria. I have more mitochondria, I can burn more energy. So I increase my basal metabolic rate, I can spend more energy. So that's why a guy that weighs 100 kilos, he burns much more calories if he walks for 1 kilometer, 5 kilometers per hour, than a woman walking beside him with 50 kilos. So if the woman has 50 kilos and walks the same speed, the same distance, she will burn much less calories. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much, and see you.